You're listening to Vote Her In, a collaboration between Two Broads Talking Politics and author Rebecca Sive, where we look at the movement to elect our first woman president. Today on the podcast, we talk to Erin Vilardi, the founder and CEO of Vote Run Lead. Hi, everyone. This is Kelly, and you are listening to Vote Her In, which is a collaboration of Two Broads Talking Politics and author Rebecca Sive, where we look at the increasingly exciting effort to elect our first woman president and a lot of issues that surround that. You'll note that we are coming to you on our new day. We've switched schedule, and Vote Her In episodes will now be on Wednesdays. So with that, I will turn it over to Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi there, Kelly. And I want to say to the listeners here, we're just thrilled to be meeting you midweek now and hoping that you'll just grab a hold of what we're talking about and what you're doing and go forth. As Kelly said, we're at a particularly exciting moment, and we're coming to you the day after the New Hampshire primary, in which there were, as you all know, two women who ran good races and show that what we knew from 2016, but we know in a different way today, that a woman can be competitive in a major political party race. So we invited Erin Vilardi, the founder of Vote Run Lead and a longtime colleague of mine, to join us today and talk about this. I couldn't really think of a better person because Vote Run Lead just has this amazing perspective across the country and among so many different communities about how women run and why they run and what we can learn from and improve upon. So with that, welcome, Erin. And if you would just really dive in and tell us your thoughts about, what you're thinking after New Hampshire.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to be here and I'm happy to talk today. I think I woke up a little bit disappointed in Elizabeth Warren's showing in New Hampshire. That was, my immediate reaction, quite honestly, given the travel that I do around the country and the general likability I think that she has among a large swath of voters. And listening to her speech from last night and, being reminded there's a couple of campaigns, Biden's campaign and hers, using the talking point that, this is 2% of the delegate count. But you can't help but sort of hear the default to the white guys, the defaulting that somehow these folks who've come out on top in New Hampshire and Iowa, and then the voters there are really getting to choose, all of a sudden we're talking about front runners and I think a very, very, still very competitive race. So those are my initial thoughts from last night. I was also really psyched to see that Amy Klobuchar finally got the kind of energy that I think I'm also hearing around the country, which is, again, that likability, her experience, her continued consistent performance in debates. New Hampshire is the first time where we actually had an opportunity to see her have that surge. And I'm excited to see what she'll do next in Nevada and South Carolina and Super Tuesday.
Do you think there are any lessons we can learn? So for women who are running for office all up and down the ballot, you hear all these people saying that they like Elizabeth Warren, they like the energy, and then she doesn't do as well in New Hampshire as you might expect. Do you think there's something we're seeing in either the way she is running her race or the way the media are portraying her that may explain some of this or that we can use going forward?
I do think that we are still, as a media, as a culture, and maybe as voters, we are still defaulting to the white guy. We are still defaulting to a very traditional look and feel of a leader. And I think we see that in this energy around, all of a sudden this is a two-man race between Buttigieg and Bernie. And I actually want to ask us to pause, and really think about why is it so easy for us to go there? Commentary in the media. Why is it so easy for us to sort of make that shift when so little of the nation has voted, so little of the reflectiveness of the nation has voted? And knowing that really, I think Super Tuesday is going to make or break a lot of these campaigns, that, there's just a low delegate count, a low voter turnout. And I would stick to what we saw both Warren and Klobuchar do for women candidates across the country, which is persistence, which is making sure that you are, not counting yourself out, even though maybe the media is. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some significant change when we look at a place like Nevada where there's more, I think it's 1 in 4 Democratic primary voters are women of color in Nevada. We haven't heard from Black and brown communities just yet as a large voting bloc. And so I'd be really interested to see as the population and demographics shift, how things begin to shape out across the country.
So related to the demographics and the numbers we do have from Iowa and New Hampshire, one of the sort of positive outcomes that I've taken from this is that in both cases, the combined vote of Klobuchar and Warren is substantial. And, proves once again that voters will vote for a woman and not small numbers, but big numbers. So I think that, combined with that persistence, we're seeing some real truth to the idea that a woman can be elected. And I'm wondering whether you think that the particular persistence that Klobuchar has had over this period of time, she didn't have any kind of a surge in the way that Warren had early on. If there are lessons there, strategies there for other women to consider, or in fact for her and Warren to consider.
I'm on everybody's text messages. I donate to everybody, so I can see some of the messaging coming out. I actually think both of them now need to be sort of talking about themselves as the potential front runners. It'll be harder for Warren to do that, but in New Hampshire, she took a little bit of a tone that was like, I'm counting on you all. And then last night her speech was a little bit more like, oh, no, we are going full speed ahead. And I think that's the Elizabeth Warren people get excited about. With Klobuchar, the shift from really, saying like, hey, I could be your president to saying like, this is what a president looks like. I've seen some of her vocabulary really shift in that direction. And I think we have to will it into existence. And the vocabulary that we use is a big part of the training we do at Vote Run Lead. The vocabulary we use to talk about ourselves is exactly like that. That's critically important because that is what's going to get parroted back from the media. That's the kind of thing where we really can get, emotionally resonant in the hearts and minds of voters. And while I think you're right, voters will vote for women in large numbers, we do still have a higher bar. And so we need to be talking about ourselves as the, as the one to beat.
So following up on that, then it sounds like, you just said women have a higher bar. Do you think that's because people sort of default to thinking of men as, who is in elected office and who they can sort of see in elected office? Do you think there are other reasons that women have that higher bar, that they have to work a little bit harder at the particular language and the way they present themselves in order to meet that threshold of people seeing them as electable?
Yes, right. And the sort of case study is Hillary Clinton, right? And finding out that the men who were shaping the media narrative were also the men who were a part of Me Too and, had a consistent track record of sexual harassment and assault in their companies, and in their media making companies. So we have to remember that the beast sort of is going to be a little slower to change than I think just one election cycle. Having two of them there really matters because it forces the conversation to actually talk about their qualifications, to do, having 6 women originally run for the presidency, people didn't know what to do with that. It was remarkable. You no longer could have that kind of, catfight language. They're also doing a fantastic job of not going after one another. They are complimentary and authoritative about one another on the stage. I actually hear that a lot from Klobuchar. I think her ability to do that is very refreshing in comparison to Trump. And so setting that narrative, but also remember that they had to split the New York Times endorsement. That's something where I wrote a small piece for put it up on MsMagazine.com. That really is robbing women of the political capital, and making them share that kind of political capital. You might have seen a surge in Iowa. Who knows if that endorsement had gone just to Klobuchar or just to one of them. So I found that whole way of sort of doing business another example of how the media is slow to change, by saying, the coveted New York Times endorsement. This year, we're actually going to water it down and we're not going to do our job. We're going to, make these two women share this political capital. And, we can debate about whether endorsements matter or not, but I think we have to remember that some of that structural sexism is built in.
So it's so interesting that you bring that up because I had such mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, as you say, there's this structural sexism, and, the one time they talk about two people is when it's two women. On the other hand, people were confronted, with the reality that there are two women who are qualified here, right? And that's an incredibly powerful message as we've been discussing. And, the other thing that occurred to me at that point, and I keep thinking about, is, of course, in the other races, for instance, those where you've trained so many women, there are going to be multiple women competing and going after endorsements and figuring out how to run against each other. And so I'm wondering if we could talk a bit about, your thoughts about in this new climate, how women go about that. We had an early discussion in this podcast about the Chicago mayoral, where two women of color ran against each other, as you know. And it turned out to be, amazingly complicated as the whole thing, sort of folded out.
Right. I mean, you look at the Texas senatorial race to potentially defeat John Cornyn. You have MJ Hager, who's a veteran, a mom who had that remarkable ability to tell her story in those ads last year. She got the DSCC endorsement, right? And then Amanda Edwards, who just got a major newspaper endorsement, right? So, we are seeing African-American woman would be, black woman would be one of the first, there's been Carol Moseley Braun and Kamala Harris, right? Would be the third African-American woman in the Senate. And, both have pretty remarkable backgrounds. Texas would be lucky to have either of them. I think that's one to watch and, for our political scientist friends to take a look at, a big state like that, a state that is, seeing some energy on the blue side, but not, we'll see who sort of comes on top of this primary and who could potentially be a strong challenger to a long-time sitting senator. So that's another example. But what I am seeing across the country, and Chicago is its own little beast, but I am seeing a different level of respect and candor among the candidates. Nita Lowey is retiring in New York 17. There's a crowded primary. The top, two candidates are women, I would say. There's another woman running as well. And, I'm just not seeing the kind of vitriol. I'm not, instead, I've been talking to both campaigns on a personal level, and giving advice. And I think we're starting to see women do it differently. I've been transparent with both with them that I'm talking to all three women actually, because I like the energy that women are bringing around, like, let the best woman win.
So just a quick follow-up to that, and then I want to turn back to Kelly. On the one hand, there's vitriol, right, which we see too much of in politics, but on the other hand, the reality is only one person can win, right? So at a certain point going down the path, candidates start calling each other out. And I wonder...
And we're actually seeing that now. Yes. And I think Warren calling out Bernie has not been good for her. I think women are punished more so when they do start to do that. So there's other strategies. Unfortunately, we're just not as well received. Maybe the good behavior is because we're not allowed to act as badly, but, I don't know that you're really seeing it from, Klobuchar either in a name calling sense. She's held Pete Buttigieg's feet to the fire around his age, but it didn't feel, for me, as an individual voter, it felt like I thought she could have gone a bit harder on him, right? But I do think we are seeing a little bit of Elizabeth Warren getting, particularly in the Northeast with the New Hampshire primary, getting a little bit punished for going after Bernie.
Are you seeing any changes down ballot in trends about who is running, about what kind of women are stepping up, what their backgrounds are, where they're coming from? And in general, we've heard this sort of narrative that there are more women running for office. Is that reflected in your work as well?
Absolutely. I mean, there are more women running for office than ever before. There are more women of color running for office than ever before. There are women who are deciding to run for office and then figuring it out as they go, which is amazing because men have been doing that for a long, long time. Right. And we've been stuck in this old rhythm of really waiting to be invited, waiting to be asked, or until we go to 15 training programs. And so the mental qualification shift that women have, this is the silver lining around Trump 2016, right? Is that women looked up and said, if that guy can do it, I can definitely be on my city council. The two seats we see women running for in the Vote Run Lead community are actually state rep and city council seats. And I think part of that is because it's what's familiar to people. I want to see more women running for executive level seats, running for mayor, running for governor. I think that's coming. I think as 2022 approaches, you're going to see also more women looking at state senate seats, right? Especially women running for higher office. I've got quite a few alumni right now who are state representatives who have their eye on state senate seats because, they can see how things are getting, log jammed at the Senate level in the state. So definitely I'm seeing an interesting group of women running for higher office, but we're seeing these crowded primaries and we're seeing from the Vote Run Lead community. I don't know if this is something that I can say nationwide, but the Vote Run Lead community are challengers. They are going to go run in a maybe a red zone that isn't, and they're a Democrat. They are not afraid to run and lose because they are interested in not just winning that seat, but building that political capital, giving voters an option, having their voice heard and maybe getting some issues moved on, or putting a dent and seeing the long-term strategy of what maybe a 2022 race might look like. So that's really been exciting to sort of hear from our group. And because we're a 501c3, because we don't endorse, because we're encouraging and we're training and we're educating women are using our resources online. We encourage people to take those kind of political risks. And I think this is the right environment to do that.
So speaking of those political risks and your comment that you think we'll see more women running for executive office shortly, can you characterize the decision-making process that those women go through? Because I think that, one of the things at least I'm concerned about is the very slow rate of change in executive office. And I mean, I discussed that a lot in Vote Her In, but, how can we move that along, taking into consideration the way women think about it?
Rebecca, that is the $1 million question. How do we get women to say yes, right? Mm-hmm. I will say, college educated, 30-something, married white women are having the easiest time saying yes, right? Coming out of Vote Run Lead's community. Because I think they feel, they see themselves more, right? Our early role models were traditionally, white women. But I'm also I'm thinking of, I have a handful of single moms who are like, I can do this. I can juggle the time management. Like that is, a big thing is sort of the balance of my life, right? How much is my life going to shake up? I have a ton of responsibilities. I'm the, CEO of the household and all the, that sounds fancier than it actually is, right? That means that I'm the one that shows up. I'm the one that picks up. I'm the one that packs lunch, and I'm the one that goes to my 9 to 5. So really working with women to figure out that like, this is how politics can be a part of your life. This is some stuff that will have to be given up, but here's why it's worth it, right? Not being able to tuck your kids in at night while you're campaigning, but this is how it's worth it. So we have to show women this sort of time management possibilities. The other thing we hear is that women, and I hear this across the board, Vote Run Lead community and as I'm traveling, they are not really that tied to party politics. Like being a local Dem or being a local Republican, it's just not a part of their identity in the way. They want to make change. They want to see stuff done. They want to get more resources to their community, but they go to the local party and they don't like what they see. They don't like who they see. Nobody looks like them. It's still, pretty antiquated place to be. And there's a lot of old rules about who gets to sort of be the anointed one locally. And even when they do win in a primary, it's like they're sort of fighting both their insider party, politics as well. Thinking of a group of women in Wyoming, Ohio that got elected, and they're dealing with some real stuff, And they have to have, and we've been teaching more of this on the curriculum side, we have to have an insider-outsider strategy for women. The training's called Run As You Are because women are stepping up, not interested in just jumping into this system. Women are stepping up because they want to change the outcomes and the system itself. So we've got to show these different navigable pathways that don't mean you're selling your soul to a party you're not that in love with.
I went to one of the one day sort of boot camp sessions that Vote Run Lead did recently, and it's so inspiring, and I want to run for office someday, maybe. And, but I think the sort of other side of it, besides the, people running in really red areas and, wanting to change things and changing things for down the road is people like me who live in super blue areas and, a state legislature seat comes open and 8 people have filed to run before you can turn around. I guess what would your advice be for people who are interested in making change and there's not necessarily an office to run for, a place, a thing to do immediately, and how can we use those same sort of skills and training and things that your organization is so great at providing if there's not an obvious thing to run for?
Well, I think 3 things. The first is, if the city that you're living in is not your hometown and your hometown is somewhere in rural America,
it is.
We need to move that.
You hit that nail on the head.
I'm in a new coalition with a fantastic group of women who are, working on rural women's leadership, really looking at rural women of color. Our rural communities are changing rapidly. The brain drain is real. And, for those who are choosing to stay or who are choosing to go back, there is a real opportunity to have a different kind of conversation about what rural America needs and the amazing women that are there to sort of step up for, not that they're not already, right, but step up into this formal political power and really see our county commissions and our co-op boards and our city councils in rural communities, because they remain overwhelmingly white and almost exclusively male. If you look at county commissions,
also often nonpartisan, right? So
they're often nonpartisan, and they pay great. They pay a lot better. So it's a real push for county commission seats out in your rural hometown. The second piece is, to consider throwing your hat in the ring so that, one, your name does, if there's 8 people already running, throw your hat in the ring. See what you can muster up, because maybe there will be an appointment in your commission in somebody's cabinet that you're going after. Maybe there is, and the third option is really looking at boards and commissions and task force, showing up at a city council meeting and figuring out what it is that you want to work on. And is there an appointment that you can get, through working, and supporting one of the candidates, or through, just making your concerns heard and your leadership known.
You know what? I love ending on this note because I find myself always doing just what you've done, which is to talk about the many opportunities for women to lead in public life that aren't necessarily elected office. And I guess speaking for my own self personally, that's kind of how I figured out how I could be a part of it, as well as being an advocate. I love your idea about just throwing your hat in the ring. And on this day after New Hampshire, I just hope every woman listening and all of her girlfriends remember that we each can do that, and we can look to Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar for inspiration and just keep moving down this path. So thanks, Erin, ever so much for joining us, and we hope to keep talking.
The Vote Her In segment is a collaboration of Two Broads Talking Politics and author Rebecca Sive. Our theme song is called Are You Listening, off of the album Elephant-Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or on Twitter or Facebook at twobroadstalk. You can find all of our episodes at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found.